Taco Palenque fans, we have something special for you. Try the Casero Taco now for only $2.75 Monday through Thursday. Flavor packed with premium sirloin rice and refried beans. Only at Taco Palenque. At participating locations for limited time, not valid for delivery. Other restrictions may apply.
From a top secret network of highly secure locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider, brought to you as always by Taco Palenque. I am your host, Mike Finger, joined by Express News Spurs beat writer Jeff McDonald, Express News sports editor Nick Talbot, and alas, sadly, we're without the great Tom Ringo Starr Osborne this week, who is on his way to the great cold north in Minnesota. He valiantly, selflessly volunteered to take the week off. We're going to forge on without him. We're going to do our best. We have a week of not as many games to talk about, but there's always something to talk about in Spurs land. Jeff McDonald, do you have any suggestions on where we should start with the team you cover in the midst of its second longest losing streak of all time?
Well, first of all, can we just give one more shout out to Tom, who got the pleasure of this surprise trip to Minnesota in the middle of December.
Yeah,
you don't want. It's like a lump of coal in your stocking.
But Tom loves every road trip. He'll find ways to make the most.
I think he was secretly rooting for LA, and so that's just like a double whammy. No LA and also Minnesota.
Yeah,
poor Tom. We'll pour one out for him.
Yep. Where do we start without him?
Where we start without him is like the big screw job, I think.
I'm at a loss here.
The Victor Wembanyama got screwed out of Rookie of the Month.
My gosh.
That's what all the fans.
I mean,
I agree with them.
I mean, my goodness. What is the league thinking on that?
You can take this.
I'm being a little facetious, but
well, yes, but go ahead and take it, because I just am bored by almost every award in the sports world. So this is more a topic for you.
What do you want to talk?
No, go ahead. It's good. It's a good idea.
You want to talk about they lost to New Orleans again, because it was the same game they always play.
No, it's good.
Rehash that if you want.
This is why the whole NBA media ecosystem is based on debating MVP all year and these,
because there's nothing to
player of the month, player of the
December.
week. Like, it's good podcast fodder to debate each way, but like the awards are so silly. It's just people voting on stuff. That's how that shouldn't be how NBA seasons are decided. That should be how college football championships are decided. just dudes voting on stuff and deciding who they think the best team is, rather than stuff on the court. But anyway, do your Chet versus Wemby.
Let's flash forward. Let's flash forward to the spring. Do you care at all who wins Rookie of the Year, or you just don't care?
Mildly more than I care about Rookie of the Month.
Because to me, this is sort of a prelude to the debate that is going to rage when the actual Rookie of the Year comes up.
Sure. It's worth it. Let's be part of the ecosystem.
It's a different electorate, right? Like, the people voting on Rookie of the Year at the end of the year is the media. For all I know, the Rookie of the Month is just some guy just picks at the league. That's decided by the league.
Mm-hmm.
So it's two different electorates. But I think the debate is really Chet won because of efficiency, right? That's why he's ahead in that race, his efficiency. Spurs fans will look at it and say, well, Victor leads all rookies in like every stat: scoring, rebounding,
counting stats,
right? Steals, blocks. And in steals and blocks, he's up at the top of the leaderboard of the whole league, not just rookies. Mm-hmm. And he leads Chet in all those categories. The real main difference, there's two main differences. One of them I see as legitimate, and one of them, I don't know. Chet's shooting percentages are a lot better. His efficiency is a lot better. And if that's the reason for a voter to put Chet over Wemby, as the top rookie, then I'll buy it, I suppose.
Assist to turnover as well.
Assist to all those stats that nobody cares about. Yeah,
all the fancy ones. All the fancy ones with fancy names like Raptor or Road Plus Minus, PER, win shares.
Yeah. I think most of those are made up. They're all made up. But I think
all stats. All words.
I do wonder if Chet gets a bump because he's on a better team, and if that's the case, I don't know if that is so fair when you're judging rookies. That's my only little quibble or whatever. And I don't know. It might be a subconscious thing. I know as a voter in the end of the year awards, when I'm looking at like MVP and all NBA, I'll start with like who's on the better team. Because if you're an all NBA player, your team shouldn't, be in last place. To me, you're not good enough as an all NBA player if your team is in last place. But for rookies, I don't think that criteria really should qualify. Because if you're a 1, 2, 3 pick, you're going to join the worst team in the league anyway. Chet happened to sit out a year, where Chet happened to join a team that already had an all-star in SGA, and he got to sit out a year. The team gets to build an extra year without him. So, I mean, those are the rules. He's still a rookie. He's still eligible, but he's not a rookie in the way that Victor is, where the whole thing is being built around him. So I think they're in two different situations. It depends on what you value. And if you're going to tell me Chet's rookie of the month and gets rookie of the year because he's more efficient and his counting stats are in the ballpark as Victor's, that's fine. But if this thing where he's on a better team starts to seep into it, I don't think that's fair when judging rookies. That's
in the Holmgren household, his folks, his apartment in Oklahoma City or his mansion, whatever it is. Where do you think the rookie of the month certificate is displayed? Is that going to be a part of his? Is that going to be something he's going to treasure for his life? Also, how many months did Timmy win rookie of the month? I have zero clue because I do
probably
not care.
All of them.
Probably all of them. Yeah, he probably
all
did.
of them.
It's just, what are we doing? And yes, we're creating content. We're having this debate, but these voting things. College sports is that way. I get my email box is just full this time of year of finalists for like left tackle of the year award, which everyone has to vote on. Backup linebacker.
I think Chet Holmgren wins that one.
The outside linebacker of the region. It's just assistant coach of the year. Why are we voting on this nonsense? But it's something to talk about. Talk about. I do think that we mentioned on this podcast a week ago that I think it was sort of all four. Tom was around, all four of us sort of not in an agreement that Victor wasn't going to win that award, right? Like that Chet was the leader for the rookie of the year through the first month.
I don't know. I was I don't want to speak for Tom because he's like in the air somewhere over St. Louis right now. But I think. Just talking yesterday at the practice, Tom was surprised Victor didn't win it.
Huh. Well, I guess
he leads all rookies in every category you could possibly count that you've ever heard of. That doesn't have a weird acronym.
I don't know if shooting percentage.
Well, okay, but no one who cares about shooting percentage?
Turnovers.
But what difference does it make? Who cares? No one cares about that. Points
and rebounds, don't get this twisted where don't get
blocks.
This twisted where it's Fingers anti-Wemby or whatever. I cannot stress this enough. I do not care. But also I'm not outraged by this in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't have cared if Wemby won. It's fine.
Same.
Okay.
Same.
This is terrible podcast content to not care, but I just don't.
But we got 10 minutes.
It's hard for us to care about an award this doesn't really make a big difference in the grand scheme of things because the rookie of the year is the one that only matters. The people that really care are the listeners at home. They get riled up about anything that's
our job is to care about what the fans care about.
Might be disparaging to the Spurs, but like if Chet Holmgren hadn't won, the Thunder fans are gonna be upset as well, right? They think Chet Holmgren should win because he has better shooting percentages. They're winning. They're going to make the exact opposite argument that Jeff's making on the shooting percentages not mattering.
What are those?
That's just the way.
Okies
That's the way it is, and that's why it's fodder, because the fans care about this. Even if as media members, we know in the grand scheme this doesn't make a difference, especially when you're with a 3-16. Because what else do you have to care about right now?
Yeah, let's move on with the podcast and talk about things no one cares about. Go ahead.
Oh, I do want to. Well, I just the last thing on that is I get that a big part of Spurs fandom is that everybody's out to get us and that no one respects us, and this sort of feeds into that. So
maybe
I sort of understand.
Maybe like, a little. I think people care because A, the team is 3-100 and there's nothing else to care about, and B, this is the one thing. I mean, maybe related to that. This is the one thing like the Spurs fans have to hang their hat on this year is we've got this great rookie, and we want the best for him. And now he's not even winning Rookie of the Month.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they care.
If he had a point guard like SGA or even half of SGA, he probably would have won Rookie of the Month.
I mean, if Chet set out this year, Oklahoma City, I'm not saying Chet is not contributing to their record and their wins. He obviously is. But I still think they were on an upward trajectory with or without him. Like they were already well into this rebuilding process that he joined. They didn't draft Chet to build around him. They were already building. Whereas Victor's a guy the Spurs drafted to build around, and that takes longer, and it's not going to look the same. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying one's better or worse. I'm just saying it's not going to look the same, and it's probably not fair to judge those two people the same, except for the fact that they're both rookies and they're both up for the same award.
That's fair.
That's fair.
All right, let's get out of here.
While we make this segue, and I want to preface this by saying that I really appreciated this email, this entire the thought that went into the person who sent this, but it's a listener who's been a longtime subscriber of the Express News, which we really, really appreciate. And
just
any
say
other
it's your mom. Just say
any
it's
other
your mom.
any other listeners, any other listeners who want to subscribe to the Express News can do that at expressnews.com. Sign up for the Spurs Nation newsletter, all that stuff. That's great. But this person says that last week your podcast is going downhill. And the last few have been hard to listen to because we talk too much about pop booing, and that we should talk more about basketball analysis. What weakness is losing the games? Poor shooting, turnovers, bad defensive assignments. What about the bench? Why aren't we seeing Wesley with Trey being hurt? Is he developing? Is Bassey the best choice as backup center? Is the team worse with Wemby off the floor? He says, not saying you have to be completely serious, but whatever the pod has been doing the last few weeks isn't working. I think that is valuable feedback. I'm not sure that we have it in us to answer all those analysis questions. I'm not sure.
No, give them to me one at a time. Give them to me one at a time.
Okay. What weakness is losing games, Jeff? This is where we're going to get into X's and O's, O's and X's, as Pop says.
All right. Yeah.
What weakness is losing it? And I'm not mocking this at all. I think it's valuable feedback. If this is what the listeners want, we should try to give it to them. I think this is valuable. So, what weakness is losing games?
They're not.
Don't be a smart aleck.
They're not very good.
Okay.
All right. They can't play defense.
That was almost too broad.
They can't play. They can't play defense. They don't have enough guys that have been there and done that to hold on to the leads and finish off the games that they do have. There's usually about a 3 or 4 minute stretch in a lot of these games where the game just gets away and they can't get it back. And a lot of it is just learning. So I don't know if there's O's and X's for me to get into, but defensively, they're one of the worst teams in the league, and they just don't have the experience to hold on to leads when they get them or close out games when they're right there.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, what's the next one?
Well, he had some suggestions for what weakness is losing games.
Oh, okay.
Is it poor shooting, turnovers,
Yes.
bad defensive assignments?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yes,
bad
all the
defensive
above.
assignments. I don't know what that means, but
Maybe just
You
bad
mean
defensive.
blowing assignments. Or
Yeah, probably
Is it more scheme, or is it effort, or is it execution? And you're going to say yes. You're going
Well,
to the Mac Brown thing and say yes.
yeah, right. I don't think it's effort, really. I do think there are moments in some of these games where they get punched in the mouth after they've lost 5 games in a row, and you can almost see in the body language that there's like, here we go again. And there's like a 5-minute stretch where they sort of let go of the rope. And then a lot of times they get back and start playing hard again, and that's why they get back in the game. So I don't think it's like a 48-minute lack of effort, but I do think occasionally there are times within the guts of games where it's not like they're not trying hard. It's that it's almost they break psychologically.
Okay.
All right.
Moving on. What about the bench? Why aren't we seeing Wesley with Trey being hurt? This is kind of this is a bit dated because Trey's healthy again. But part of the reason why we weren't seeing Wesley is because they just they're like we've mentioned this before. Wesley has been underwhelming so far since being drafted. Correct?
Yes. And I hate to talk ill of the man. I like him, but from what we saw in the preseason, what I assume the coaches are seeing in practices, he doesn't look a whole lot different than last year in terms of decision making and finishing at the rim and shooting. I think he's a very good athlete, and I think that's what the Spurs sort of saw in him in the draft, and was hoping they could polish him up. But I don't think that's happened yet. Like every time he does get an opportunity, it just doesn't seem to happen for him. Doesn't seem to work out for him.
Is Bassey the best choice as backup center?
Who's the next choice? Didn't know there was anyone else to choose from, really.
I suppose you could.
But my answer is yes. I'm actually very, very high on Charles Bassey for what he is.
I sort of agree.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like he's the only dude out there rebounding, only dude out there trying to defend. I mean, every time it's sort of like
shooting 70%.
Probably. I mean, he was 4 for 4 in New Orleans.
Me.
Well, I didn't look it up today. Well, how many games have they played since we last talked? Because in New Orleans he was 4 for 4, so he's probably shooting better than that now. Yeah. I think with almost every player, it's like, what do you expect of them? And we didn't, I think when they signed Charlie Bassey, you didn't really expect much of him. Like they
got him for nothing.
They got him for nothing. They found him on the scrap heap. And so if he gives you anything, you're sort of impressed by it. And so that's probably where I am. Like, oh, this guy they found from nothing is actually a pretty good rebounder. And he's blocking shots. I think I'm for what he is. I'm a Charlie Bassey.
I guess Sandro Mamukelashvili would be the
I guess
another option there.
Is he a center?
I don't know.
I don't really count him as a center.
You could go small. Let
be
Mamu
really small.
cook. Let Mamu cook. Is the team worse with Wemby off the floor? Yes.
Okay. Go
I think that's the case. I think that's the case with every great player. And maybe if you, I don't know. I don't know what there is to say about that. Because clearly Wemby is a difference-making player. And they need him. I guess this is not what he asked, but we could go back to the season-long discussion of his minutes, the way he's being used. I think the 2 games that the Spurs played since our last podcast were a back-to-back against the Atlanta Hawks and DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, where Trae just went crazy and rallied the Hawks from a 15-point deficit to pull away down the stretch. Wemby that day was questionable due to right hip tightness and ended up playing, but he ended up playing fewer than his usual workload. Pop said they were trying to protect him. And then he did take off his first game of the season at New Orleans the next night. But again, just shifting to Wemby usage and on and off the floor, he hasn't played as much as like Giannis or Jokic, but he's still playing like 30 minutes a night. And I think he's played all but 1 game. And I think based on common expectations before the season started, I think he's played more than people might have thought. And I think he'll play more as the season progresses, but I don't think it's a case of the Spurs limiting him to a prohibitive degree. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I agree. I mean, I think I think a lot of people thought he would sit a lot for some reason, and he obviously hasn't.
That never made sense.
And sometimes when you talk, I mean, I'm just thinking about when you talk to other people or other players, not with the Spurs, about. So when I was talking to Davis Bertans in Oklahoma City, one of the things I just asked the open-ended question, like, what do you think of this kid Victor Wembanyama that's playing for the Spurs? And the first thing he said was, I'm surprised he's played as much as he has. Like, he's been able to play as much as he has, because coming from France, they don't play every other day. They don't play back-to-backs. Probably the amount of games he's played already, he's getting close to a full season over there. And Dov said, I've been impressed with his durability and the way he's been able to hold up and show up night after night after night. So I think that is something that people find impressive.
Right about the time we were recording this podcast, we got a release from the Rockets about assigning Amen Thompson to the G League. I know that's injury related, but they're the typical rookies have those periods where they're either not playing or taking some G League time. And Thompson was a top 4, top 5 pick. I think Wemby's played as much as everybody except for Chet. So
Thompson's brother is actually playing pretty well.
He is. Those guys are playing
what's his rapture? He's not getting votes.
Yeah, we will see.
All right. Are there any more boring questions?
Oh, let me go back to that.
I can go up answer a couple of questions that we addressed on the podcast. We were saying whether or not Charles Bassey was still shooting above 70%. I looked it up. He is shooting 72.5%.
There you go.
Interestingly enough, he has a 17.8 per PER. I know advanced stats for some people. That is the same as Victor Wembanyama.
Can I go back and answer the question then about Charles Bassey? What was the question? Is he the best option?
Is he the best choice as backup center?
Is he the best choice?
Okay, I'm changing my answer to no. He should be the starting center. How about that?
No, he's. I think that's a great find. I think that I remember we were on the road somewhere when it was a shoot around when we found out that Spurs are going to be grabbing Bassey off the old waiver wire today, and he thought, it's a nice note for the notebook today, but I'm not sure that's going to matter.
Yeah, he was a two-way. It was a two-way contract at first.
Yeah,
that's what they signed him to first. So it was kind of like who cares, but it was mostly irrelevant. I mean, it was.
Now it's become like he's a guy you don't mind sticking around for a while. And he's not. This might be the best he ever is in terms of. I shouldn't say the best he ever is, but it could be the biggest role he has, backup center. I don't think he's ever going to move up.
He's under contract for 4 years. He'll be around. Yeah. He might outlast Wemby. Who knows? Let's start that rumor.
I don't think he'll ever be your problem. I don't think it'll ever be like, wow, they need to do something like Charlie Bassey.
And if you do stumble into a better backup center at some point, that's fine too. He can be third team or whatever. But I think he's fine where he is. Anyway, any more boring questions for us to answer?
They weren't boring. They weren't boring. They this gave us something to talk about.
I don't know. You were talking about this or that, and I think I fell asleep there for a while.
I guess.
Well, he sums up. Again, I want to reiterate. I appreciate feedback like this. I'm not dismissing it. Maybe we do need to get more into the nuts and bolts. I'm not sure that's why our legions of listeners tune in to get into the minutia of Blake Wesley and Charlie Bassey, but sure, every now and then, why not? As Bill from Kerrville, who we appreciate a lot, longtime subscriber, listener for at least 3 years, he says, not saying you have to be completely serious. And he says, I'm an old fart, so maybe my impressions may not be representative of most of your listeners. But either way, appreciate the note. Really appreciate you tuning in, all the people who tune in every week. And we can try to do a little something for everybody.
That was a fair email. That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's
appreciate.
Yeah. One interesting stat here is as answering Bill's question here, the worst lineup for the Spurs has Wembanyama in it at -33, and the best one has them in it at +22. So,
who were with them in the worst one?
It's as expected. It's the
starting five.
It's the starting five. It's Collins, Johnson, Vassell, Sohan, and Wemby. And the best one is the same lineup. Not quite the same lineup. It's Johnson, Vassell, Trey Jones, Sohan, and Wembanyama.
So just Trey subbed in for Sohan. No,
For Zach.
For Zach, I see.
Great for Zach.
Wemby at the 5. Wemby at the 5.
Wemby at the 5 is the best lineup. And then the second best lineup is Doug McDermott, Cedi Osman, Bassey, Trey Jones, and Wemby.
See, that's the kind of hang up with those stats is it depends on who you're playing against. And I have a feeling, and I do think that the Wemby at the center, Trey Jones at point guard, Jeremy Sohan at power forward probably is a better lineup, but that lineup that's their worst is always playing against the other team's best, and that factors into it.
Statistically, right now with these lineups, and when you look at these plus minuses and everything, and this is one reason you don't see a lot of real plus minus talk early on in the season. This is getting way too in front of the stats here. Is that the statistical sample is not very large right now. We're talking about 16 minutes together or 8 minutes together. You can't really take these things and look at them, and that's why the coaches don't care that much, really, until like past the All-Star break and before they really statistically matter.
Well, what I'm curious about though is does that show the total number of minutes played?
Yes, it does. It does.
So what? So this is good. That starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Look, give me the total minutes played for that, and then the total minutes played for the one with Trey Jones subbing out for Zach Collins. What are those numbers?
It is 88 minutes versus 16.
88 minutes through 19 games here?
That's what it says.
That cannot be right.
That's what it. Well,
the starting lineup has played 88 minutes together in 19 games. That cannot be right.
Well, Devin's missed some.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
So usually when you're talking about the starting lineup playing together, a lot of times it's 5 minutes to start the first half, 5 minutes to start the second half, and then it gets all jumbled.
5 times 19 is 100 is 95. That's already more.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
I think those numbers are off.
But then you also factor in that Devin's missed the games.
They played in 10 games together. The Jeremy's played in 10 games together for 88 minutes is what the stats are, which is
88 minutes in 10 games.
When you look at these things, I don't know why.
Well, that's an extremely tiny sample, and I'm skeptical of those numbers, but I will. Anyway, let's just move on. I suppose.
Wemby at the 5, since that was brought up. We sat there after practice yesterday waiting to talk to Wemby, and I'm learning when it's a Wemby day, like when they tell you to be there at noon, it's going to be 1, because that dude's insane and will work out with like an army of coaches for an hour after the game, after practice. Like everyone else will do their little individual work, and one by one they'll start to head to the locker room. Wemby's still there for a full hour. But yesterday we watched him working on like post footwork and entry, and what to do with an entry pass and how to keep a guy. But it was all Wemby at the 5 stuff yesterday. Whereas a lot of times you'll see him just working on ball handling or those little actions where he's getting elbow jumpers or 3-pointers. This is the first time that I recall there's been a lot of post work. So maybe there's some more Wemby at the 5 minutes to come. I kind of wonder. I think we all know the reason he doesn't play a lot of 5 is like what centers is he going to guard? I was thinking of it the other day. Like he didn't play in New Orleans, but who would he have guarded if he had started that game in New Orleans? Because he's not guarding Zion and he's not guarding Valanciunas. And then if he doesn't, who's guarding those guys? Like that would have been a weird matchup. So I don't know.
It would have been fun to see that. We're eventually, as NBA observers, going to see some Zion versus Wemby games.
See, I think Wemby would have guarded. I think Wemby might have guarded Ingram, and you make like Keldon do it against Zion. Like, there's no real good answer there at this point.
Yeah, but that's going to be fun at some point. Just 2 really different bodies, 2 physical freaks going at each other, and that could happen for a long time if they stay healthy. The other thing, just to continue the analysis, that the basketball O&X analysis.
All right, can we get back to Yuck Yucks after that?
Yeah, after that we can get to Yuck Yucks.
Okay.
But Wemby started that Atlanta game basically playing. He was guarding the center, and doing more of that in that game when the Spurs jumped out to a lead. If you were watching that closely, I think we're going to see more of that. I think they see that that's a matchup they can exploit. They can do some more fun stuff with him being inside. I think that helps the defense in a way too, to have him in the middle rather than roaming around. But again, that's just some O and X. We're not going to do O and X all podcast, every podcast.
But is Pop the only person you've ever heard call them O's and X's?
Yeah. It always makes me smile because he's very consistent with that. He's been consistent for 20 years.
Yes.
He's gone. We don't care about the O's and the X's. I don't know of anybody else that puts it that way. There must have been a coach like Hank Egan must have put it that way.
I think he's big on alphabetical order.
And that makes sense.
All right. Okay. Can we get back to the yuck now?
Yeah, we're winding it down. So
all right. Well, I have a
big finish.
I have a fun question. Because
question.
In that hour, while we were sitting around waiting to talk to Victor Wembanyama, you know how you get bored with and you just start making up all kinds of crazy conversation topics with your fellow scribes and TV people and bloggers and podcasters. So the question we came up for each individual person, it's an individual answer for each person. You have to decide what your answer is. But of every male player that is in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame right now, how old does one of them have to be that you could beat them one-on-one in a game of basketball? To 11.
Well, my answer is going to be much different than
exactly. That it's all individual. I had to go with 95-year-old Bob Cousy because I think even 85-year-old Oscar Robertson or 85-year-old Jerry West is probably schooling me. But I think I specifically see it's not fair for me because I haven't really touched a basketball in 20 years. So my answer is going to be different than someone such as yourself that plays more than Victor Wembanyama.
I still play. I'm a 46-year-old man who still gets up and down the court twice a week.
Do you think you could
playing 5-on-5? I'm a good teammate.
Do you think you could beat an 85-year-old Jerry West in a game of one-on-one to
100%? And then this is not controversial.
Okay, that's fair because my answer with Cousy was I could beat any 85-year-old man on the planet in basketball.
I think you probably could. And you were a solid shooter off the bench for Madison JV back in the day playing with Jeff Foster.
Yeah.
I'm a 6'2", 46-year-old fella who's in decent shape for a 46-year-old fella who plays basketball twice a week. I think that to me it's probably in the 60 range. Who are the 60-year-old Hall of Famers?
Well, now I'm unprepared.
Yeah,
I'm unprepared.
You threw out 60-year-old Spud Webb on.
For me, I didn't even bother looking at this. I even threw out the Hall of Fame, and I asked, well, here we started talking about it, and it's like, well, it'd have to be a guard. Like if it's somebody that's 6'9", 6'10", they're still just going to be able to back you down and score. Like George Gervin, I still don't think I could beat George Gervin. Because he would just have the size advantage. But so it would have to be a guard. So narrowed it down to that. And then I just, for fun, threw out the Hall of Fame part, and then asked, could I beat a 60-year-old Spud Webb at basketball? And the answer was, of course not. And apparently Spud is, no offense, has let himself go too. Yeah, like he's not a little, he's not a skinny man anymore. But the consensus in the room was there's no way Jeff McDonald could beat 60-year-old Spud Webb at a game of one-on-one, and they're probably right.
It depends. It honestly depends on the Hall of Famer or the former NBA player on what they've been doing. Because take our game, it's got kids in it. It's got 20-year-olds, and there's a 62-year-old guy who played back in the day with Meadowlark Lemon, and he's taller than I am. He's 6'4". He's 62 in great shape, and we're a good matchup. I had the ultimate respect for 60-year-old guys, this lifelong ballers who 60-year-olds can play, and for sure 60-year-old basketball Hall of Famers, if they've been playing, would wipe the floor with me. But if it's a guy who just has not been active at all and can barely walk around, I think it's dependent. It's a fun exercise. I don't know what Spud Webb's been up to.
All right.
But I think I would say that I'll put it this way. There are probably 60-year-old Naismith basketball Hall of Famers who I could beat in a one-on-one game. I just don't know who they are.
Your job of the next week is to research that and tell me. Okay. The last one is, could you beat Pop in a game of one-on-one?
This is gonna get me in trouble, but I have 100%. 100. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. I don't know if you could.
Well, the funny part was I was pretty sure I could. Like, I was saying I could, and then like literally within seconds we look out there and Pop is doing like defensive movements with Victor, and I was like, never mind, I can't. He can he can still move a little bit.
It's that's an interesting thought experiment.
This is what you talk about when you're waiting an hour for Victor Wembanyama and the team is 3-16.
Yeah.
Indeed. Back to levity for the people that want stats, because Finger was wondering whether or not those stats were real. So I looked up minutes for the 3-player lineups.
Mm-hmm.
And your best 3-player lineup is Devin Vassell, Trey Jones, and Victor Wembanyama on the floor at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And
how many minutes have they played?
They have played only 95 minutes together. Then your worst is Collins, Vassell, and Sohan at minus 95, and they've played 172. Right behind that, at 266 minutes, is Collins, Sohan, and Wembyama, and they're at minus 93 minutes. So take that for what you will.
Those are all the starting lineup combinations.
Those are the 3, yeah. But then with people shuffled out because we have injuries with Malachi's in there, and Branham's in there, and he's the next one with a -1.
Okay.
So, and that's
all.
24 minutes. So
that's all good to know. We had some levity. We had some silliness. We had some.
Tell Bob Cousy I'm coming for him. I'm coming for Cousy.
We had some O and X analysis, if you want to call it that. We have more games to talk about next week. We have Tom's trip to the Great White North. We have the Chicago Bulls and DeMar DeRozan coming into town on Friday, and a trip to the Houston Rockets next week, which I think Jeff is on. Is that right?
That's correct.
So we'll cover all that next Wednesday. Glad that everybody could be around this time. Send us your critiques, your requests. We were not going to do requests every week, but we were happy to do it this time. What did you want to say before I signed off, Jeff?
I'm going to challenge Calvin Murphy to a game of one-on-one
in Houston. That'll be great. I think he'll be better dressed than you are. That's the lock of the week. Also, I think he'd beat you 11-1.
I think I get one. That's pretty great.
I think you might be able to get one.
Appreciate your
So look forward to that. We'll talk about that next week. We will see you on the other side. Until then, take care of each other and keep it real.